And I'm David.
Sorry, we already did that.
I gotta tickle my nose. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
It's good. Wait.
Oh, God.
Hold on.
Be out of an...
Oh, God. Okay. My next what?
Hello. Welcome back. We are Self-Possessed.
I am David.
And I am Craig. And welcome to our September Wrap Up. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
This month just kind of flew on by, I think. It did not feel like this was like really going that fast. And then suddenly here we are. End of September.
I'm looking at your pile, and then I'm looking at my pile, and it's just crazy.
We had a reversal of fortune this month. Last month, David had a great month.
I spoke too soon last month is what I did.
Yeah. And this month, I definitely had a better month for sure. So we're going to wrap up our September books and our September TBR with you and show off our book report cards for the books that we read this month. Mm-hmm. Are you excited to do that?
Mm-hmm. Hold on. I got to tickle.
So, we are super excited to be back. We're super excited to be here with you again. Thank you for coming back. If you haven't already liked the video, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notifications every time we post a new video. And we have quite a few things coming up in October. October is our favorite month of the year. It is officially spooky season, and we are both here for it. Mm-hmm. Aren't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm almost kind of more excited for our October TBRs than I am to kind of even wrap up this. So.
I am too. I'm hoping for a good reading month.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of launch right into it. And if you haven't been with us before, every month when we do our wrap-ups, we do what we'd like to call a book report card. So we break down the books in 5 different categories and then give it a grade based on the scores we gave it in those categories. Mm-hmm. The idea being that you could kind of get a better understanding of what the book is and what we thought of the book by using this rather than just giving it like a typical star rating.
And I've been grading papers all week,
Yeah.
And it's just good to grade something other than horrible syntax.
Yeah, and we love our students, but this is definitely more fun than work, for sure. So, Yeah. You ready to start?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. My first book this month was All the Blues Come Through by Metra Farrari, I'm sorry, who actually I got to engage with a little bit on Instagram and talk with on Instagram a little bit, and she liked us talking about the book a little bit. So I enjoyed this book. It's the beginning book of a trilogy, I believe, or a series, and it is about a botanist who invents a flower that can purify the air on Earth. And in this series, the Earth is going through some major climate issues. So it's a Greek myth story kind of wrapped into a tale about climate change and what we're doing to the Earth. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't what I expected for sure. It wasn't my favorite book that I've ever read, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. If you like sharp, snarky dialogue, if you like Greek myths, if you like, parables about the environment, this is a great book for you. So for plot development and pacing, I gave this a 90 out of 100. I think it moved really fast. It was interesting to kind of see how it unfolded. For character development, I gave it a 90. The main character is very interesting, though I do think she makes decisions that I was kind of like, what? Theme and subject matter, I gave it an 80. While I think the idea here is really, really smart, and it's strong to kind of tie our world in with the world of like Greek myths and talk about how the Greek myths are still affecting us to this day, I think it wasn't as successful as other parts of the book for sure. I gave it a 90 out of 100 for writing style, which I thought the writing style was great. I thought the dialogue was great. It's snappy. There were some things that kind of left me scratching my head about it, but ultimately I enjoyed it. And then for engagement, I gave it an 85 out of 100, which I would say I was pretty engaged the whole way through. I finished it pretty fast, but there were times where I was like, what the hell is happening in this book? So that gives it a final score of 87 out of 100, which is a good solid B. So for me, All the Blues Come Through by Metra Ferrari was a B. I don't know if I'm going to read book 2 when it comes out. I don't know if I'm all that invested, but I enjoyed reading it, and I'm glad I picked it up. And it's not a book that a lot of people are talking about, so if we can get the conversation kind of, yammering on about this book, I think that's better for the author and for independent publishers. So, yep, that's mine.
Last month was a huge reading month for me. I found Sandra Brown last month, and I kind of devoured a lot of her books. I bought a lot of her books. I just liked the way the first book that I read of hers was Blind Tiger, and I just liked the pacing and the plot of that book. So immediately after that, I just kind of went through her kind of book catalog and just started getting everything. And then I kind of spoke too soon.
Yeah.
Last month. Play Dirty was the one that I chose for September. And I think I picked that one because of the title. The title is pretty, it was pretty sexy, So I had high hopes for this one after reading Blind Tiger and Thick as Thieves, which were just kind of tremendous reading experiences for me. But Play Dirty, you have a football star who kind of throws a game, and he is thrown in jail for about 5 years, I think. And on the day that he gets out, he is summoned to a rich kind of airline magnate and his wife. The airline owner is this rich man in a wheelchair, and he kind of proposes to this football player. I'm trying to remember his name because she always has good names for men. Griff. His name is Griff. And the airline owner kind of proposes to Griff, well, I can't have children. Would you sleep with my wife? And I will give you this much money. So right off, the idea sounds really, really good. And then I kind of got into it, and it just kind of filters out towards the end there. And it's just not a lot of likable characters except for Griff, who we're kind of watching this play out through his eyes. So plot development and pacing, I gave an 80 out of 100. Character development, 75 out of 100. Griff is a good character. It's probably the only good character in this book. The heroine is a little. So I wasn't really into her character at all. Theme and subject matter, 80 out of 100. Writing style, 100 out of 100, because I still am a devoted Sandra Brown reader even after this. She's written over 80-something books, and, it's okay to have a few kind of clunkers there. And then reader engagement was an 80 out of 100. It kind of took me a while to get through this as opposed to the other books that I read. So the final grade I gave Play Dirty is 83 out of 100, which is about a B-. So, yeah. A little disappointing, but look at that picture. Love that picture.
I mean, it did inspire you to get more of her books, so that's not a bad thing.
A lot of her romance books, which are good.
Yeah. Okay, my next one is Mrs. March by Virginia Feito. And I had kind of, the moment I heard about this book, I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. That's really cool. It's like a thriller, but like it seemed like it was set like, back in the 50s or 60s, and like about publishing kind of, and about a wife who is unsure of what's actually happening. It was not any of those things. I mean, I guess some of those things to an extent. The book was surprising in good ways and surprising in ways that were very disappointing as well. I don't think I'm alone saying this, but I think a lot of people who read it were confused about the setting. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, because she doesn't really give you a lot of clues as to when it's set. There's small little things that get dropped throughout the novel that kind of tell you the setting. That really bothered me. I was like trying the whole time to figure out where am I? Like, I know I'm in New York City. I know the area and the surroundings, but I don't know what time period I'm in. So I kept like trying to find clues or read between the lines and figure it out, and I couldn't really. Ultimately, it's about a wife who is kind of spiraling because of some things that her husband has written and things that are happening in her life, and so she kind of starts to spiral, and you start to not know what's real and what's not, which, if you watched our last Q&A video, like unreliable narrators are not my favorite thing. And so as you go along in the book, it's really hard to trust her as a narrator, especially with the ending. So I didn't love this book. I didn't hate it by any means, but I had some kind of questions, really. So for plot development and pacing, I gave it a 98 out of 100. This book moves fast. It is not very long. It's short. It's about 200 and some odd pages, 260-ish pages, and it moves. It does a really nice job of that, and it keeps you wanting to read and keep going. But for character development, I gave it a 95 out of 100. The main character, again, unreliable, and you don't really know if you can trust her, and I don't always love that. Theme and subject matter is my lowest. I gave it an 80 out of 100. When I got to the end, I was like, that's what this was about? That's what happens? So I had some real issues there at the end, but getting there, I enjoyed myself. A 90 out of 100 for writing style. The writing style is really interesting. I only knocked off points because I didn't know I didn't know when this was taking place. So, and then I gave it a 90 for engagement because I was both reading and listening to this book at the same time, and when I was listening to it, I was much more engaged than when I was just actually reading it. So I don't know what that says about the book necessarily, but I did enjoy listening to it more than I enjoyed reading it. So that gives it a final grade of 91 out of 100, which is a good solid A- for Mrs. March by Virginia Feito. While I did enjoy the book, I think that there were some things that really ended up bothering me, but if you like thrillers, if you like historical fiction, if you like unreliable narrators, this book will work really, really, really well for you, I think. And it's a quick read, so you might enjoy it. And I think the end will leave you with a head scratch kind of WTF, what is happening moment. So, and then I found out that Elizabeth Moss has optioned it because she also has a pull quote on the back, and it's going to be a film with Elizabeth Moss in it.
Nice.
So, yeah,
nice.
That's Mrs. March.
So my next book, we've said this before, we're both theater teachers, and there's a unit in my theater history course that I teach about kind of Broadway flops, and so I quickly grabbed Song of SpiderMan, which has been in our library for a very long time. And one of my students was interested in reading this, so I decided to read it first before I gave it off to him. It's nonfiction, of course. It's almost, I don't know, it's a tell-all book of all the crap that happened during the pre- and post-production of this Broadway musical, which I'm sure if you can go on YouTube, just look up Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark, and you can see a lot of craziness happening. It's by Glenn Berger, and he's the one that kind of wrote the book for Spider-Man, the musical, and you only get his point of view, which I kind of had a problem with because I think there's 3 different sides to this story. There's multiple sides to this story. There's his story as the book writer. There's the story of Julie Taymor, the director, who has her own story. And then there's, of course, the band U2, which has their own story to it. And I'm sure you look on YouTube, you can see all 3 of those stories and just, pick whichever one you believe the most. But I don't know. I was expecting so much more about, history stuff, but it was more like, I don't know, it was more like a tell-all, which I don't really enjoy too much. I know a lot of people do, but I just don't necessily do.
So it was more sensational than it was anything else. Especially
if it's just one-sided, I just didn't get into it. And it just kind of puts, I really love Julie Taymor, so it kind of puts her in a bad light. So for plot development and pacing, I gave it a 60 out of 100. For character development, there was really no changes here with anybody, really. I think everybody was kind of adamant on their own point of their own truth was reality. Theme and subject matter, 70 out of 100. Writing style, 60 out of 100. Reader engagement, a 50 out of 100. It took me a while to get through it because it was just like, at the end of it, I was just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Really. So the final grade was 50 out of 100. I was really disappointed by this. So final grade, F. Yeah.
That might be the lowest grade you've ever given to a book so far.
I know, it's sad because I teach this musical quite a lot every semester, and it just was not, I don't know, it was very disappointing.
That's understandable.
Sad. Makes me sad.
So my next one is also my entertainment world nonfiction, and that was A Star Is Born, the making of the 1954 movie and its 1983 restoration by Ronald Haver. I enjoyed reading this book and actually kind of tore through it. As I got further into the book, though, I kind of became less interested in what was being relayed here, mostly because if you are a filmmaker or you love film or you love the behind the scenes technical stuff about making a movie, this is a great book. There were whole chapters completely dedicated to the 3D technology that was being developed by Warner's and the kind of impact it had on the making of A Star Is Born. And there were a lot of technical chapters about the type of film screens that were being used and the type of film that was being used, and his was sensational and this was not sensational. I had hoped that there would be a lot more behind the scenes drama, and there's a whole chapter about the troubles and the tension, problems, and crises that were happening on set, but so much of it isn't related to Julie Garland as much as I thought it would be. And it's much more related to the money and the writing of the script and the creation of the songs, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I didn't find as interesting. So by the end I was kind of well, I learned some stuff, which is great, but I kind of lost interest as the book went on.
We should have switched.
We probably should have switched, more than likely. But it's still a good book. And if you love A Star Is Born, any version of A Star Is Born, this is a great, great thing to pick up. And I think it gave me a lot of information and it shed a lot of light on what that process was like. So for plot development and pacing, I gave it a 90. I did get through it really fast. Character development, I mean, there aren't characters per se, but the way that he portrays people is really interesting. And that's an 85 out of 100. For theme and subject matter, I gave it a 90 because obviously I'm invested in the book and I wanted to keep reading. Writing style, I gave it a 75. And the only reason I gave it a 75 was because of how technical it gets. The opening chapter is the best chapter. It's the prologue, and it walks you through what LA was like, what Hollywood was like really in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and it puts you right in that world, which is fantastic. But after that, the writing gets very bogged down in technical jargon and a lot of very specific scientific writing almost, and not as interesting as I would have hoped. And then I gave it a 75 out of 100 for engagement because I did read it fast, but I was less engaged by the end. And that gives it an 83 out of 100, which is a solid B- for A Star Is Born. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
My next book was going to be Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. Like I said at the beginning of this video, it was not a good reading month for me. Once I kind of got to this, I was like, I can't do it. I can't commit to this just now. So I kind of DNF'd it right off the bat because it was just a very busy month for me, and I wanted to put extra energy into this book, so it may kind of bleed over maybe into November or December. Sometimes that happens, right? Yeah. So disappointing, but I'm still looking forward to reading this.
Right. You didn't DNF it because you didn't like it. It just wasn't. You weren't in the mood for it at the time.
No. Yeah. And then it was just I wanted to read Song of SpiderMan, and I just, I was like, let me get to that first, and then maybe come back to it at the very end. And then I just ran out of time.
Yeah. And the month snuck up on us like that. So. So my next book is actually one that was not on my TBR. I kind of got through my TBR pretty quickly, including the book that David gifted to me. I decided to pick up a couple other books because I had finished the ones that I had set for myself. So the first book that I bought, which we bought in early September, and I did not think I would get to, is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. If you don't know who Stephen Graham Jones is, I think last summer he put out The Only Good Indians, which was a pretty big book all over the place. He's a horror genre writer, and I was really excited for this book, not only because the title is the most amazing title, but then when I read the description, and it's about a young indigenous girl who is really focused and loves slasher movies, I was like, well, that's a character, that's me. Like, not me, but like that's something that I also really love. So I thought, I'm going to love this book. So I picked it up. I finished all my other books, and I was like, okay, I'm going to read this one. And I got through this one in basically a weekend. I read it fast. I also listened to it, which was kind of nice to be able to listen to it. And I liked it. Question mark. I think it's a really interesting concept. I was disappointed by the end. I was not fully happy with how it ended and how it resolved and what the kind of actual like big twist was at the end. So that was disappointing to me. But the process of getting there was actually really interesting, and I quite liked the book a lot, and I think that the content of the book is really interesting. I did try to explain to him what it was about, and
nope,
it didn't go well.
Couldn't do it.
I was really bad at explaining it, so I'm not gonna give you a plot synopsis, but it is about a young girl named Jade who lives in a small town in Idaho, and she is obsessed with slasher movies, and she's convinced that the events that are happening in her town are leading to an ultimate like showdown slasher real life adventure. So that's kind of what happens, and then you kind of follow her along all of her twists and turns. So for My Heart is a Chainsaw, plot development and pacing, I give it a 90 out of 100. It does move quickly. It's interesting. Character development is also a 90. Most of the characters are really interesting. There's a lot of things that don't get super well developed, and that was a little frustrating. Theme and subject matter is an 80 because ultimately what I thought it was going to be about, it wasn't, and then I think it could have said more than it actually did. For writing style, I gave it an 85 out of 100. I really like his writing. I like how it moves. I like how it flows. And then for engagement, I give it a 90 out of 100. I did finish it fast, and I was, in the world. That gives it an overall score of 87 out of 100, which is a B+. So not bad. Not my favorite book in the world, but not bad. I kind of liked everything I read this month, except for one book, which I loved. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I didn't hate anything. I liked most of the things that I read. So, yeah.
Good.
My Heart is a Chainsaw, B+.
Your choice for me this month was the Bake Shop at Pumpkin and Spice, and I will be honest with you, I read the first story.
That's it?
Yeah.
You didn't read anything else?
No, I read the first story because there's 3.
Oh,
there's
okay.
3. So I think what's going to happen is that I'm going to read one for each month. At least during the fall, like October, November, and December. All right. So the first one I read was Sweet Magic by Donna Kaufman, which was it was cute. It was cute. Let me just go through these real quick. Okay, so plot development and pacing, I gave a 70 out of 100. Character development, 70 out of 100. Theme and subject matter, 80 out of 100. Writing style, 80 out of 100. Reader engagement, 60. Here's why. Okay, it was like going to a bake shop and having full reign of all the sweets that you can get. And after a while, it doesn't get fun anymore. You start to get sick. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. For me, it was a little bit too sweet for me. But it was still, it was still a good enjoyable read, I guess. It's a young lady named Bree runs this bake shop, and she kind of falls in love with this guy named Caleb, who kind of runs his uncle's kind of restaurant, and they kind of meet. She is a little witchy, and she creates these cookies that help people fall in love.
Aww.
So it's cute. It's really cute. I don't think I was in the mood for cute.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't in the mood for it. And sometimes you're not. Sometimes you are. I think next month I think I will be, because I think I'll be more in the kind of Halloween spirit. And this first book is set during the Halloween season. There's a Halloween parade that they're getting ready for. So yeah. So I think it's cute. I'm going to read the next one next month. That'll be a part of mine. So that way I can fully digest it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Digest all those sweet stuff.
Well, I'm glad that it was cute, at least. I'm glad it's not the worst book in the world.
I think if you would have gave it to me like in July or August, I would have been like, oh, this is really great. But I was like, no, I need thrillers, and I need something like a sexy thriller of some kind. Hence
right.
Sandra Brown.
You're more into the sexy, not the sweet.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a cupcake afterwards.
Right. Just to tie it all together.
Okay, go ahead. Speaking of sweet.
Yeah. My next book is the one that David gifted me, which is Sweetbitter by Stephanie Danler. If you remember our TBR video, you know I was not at all excited to read this book. I was not looking forward to it. It is not my style. I'm not into like what this book was about. I normally am not into it. And then my mind was changed. I love this book. I told my students the other day in my creative writing class that I never thought a book about a waitress in New York City would ever be this captivating or interesting, or working at a restaurant would be this captivating or interesting, but it is. And it is all because of the writing. This writing is beautiful, it's poetic, it's interesting, it's engaging, it's like there were words and phrases that I wanted to deconstruct, and so I loved Sweetbitter, and I think there were some characters in here who I had a problem with. Like the main male character I thought was kind of a jerk, and I didn't like him very much, but our narrator I love, and I love the situations that she gets herself into and the restaurant that she works at. I could feel myself at this restaurant. That's how good the writing is of this book. So for plot development and pacing, I give it a 95 out of 100. It took me a minute to kind of like get going in it, but once I was there, I was there. So character development, I gave 100 out of 100. The characters, the writing, the way it's constructed, all super interesting. So I loved that. Theme and subject matter, I gave it a 90. That's the lowest one because I really thought I wasn't going to be interested, but by the end I was super captivated. So writing style, 100. Reader engagement, 100. I love this book. That gives it a score of 97 out of 100, which is an A for me. I loved Sweetbitter. So good work, babe. I'm so proud of you. You picked a book that I didn't think I was going to like that I actually liked. And because I liked it so much, I am now currently reading Stray by Stephanie Danler. He actually told me I should read this book too because he had it but then gave it away. And so I bought another copy of it, and I am about halfway through, and it's not as good as Sweetbitter. This is a memoir, this is fiction. Although you could claim that this is like a memoir because that was basically her life, right? And she talks about that in this book. So I am halfway through Stray, which is about her relationship with both of her parents and how she essentially felt like a stray in her own life, and talks about why. And I kind of love her writing. I love her writing style. I love the way she uses words. And so I'm really into this one right now, and I'm hoping to finish this by early October so I can move on to my October TBR. So, love Sweetbitter. Read it. If you haven't read it, read it. It's worth it. I also listened to this on top of reading it, and that helped me tremendously. And I loved being able to immerse myself in the world. So, yeah, that's it.
I feel bad.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
So bad.
Sometimes we love books, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we have good months and not.
It was just a really crappy reading month for me, and I think it was just a lot of other stuff outside of reading. Just work stuff was a lot for me, at least this month anyway. So hopefully next month, I think it's handled.
Yeah,
hopefully we'll see.
Well, and that's the thing is, how was your September? Comment below. Let us know, what was your September reading month? Did you have any surprises? Did you have any things that you absolutely loved? Things that you might have hated? What was your favorite book of September? So comment below if you have one. And if you've read one of the ones that we've read and you concur with some of our thoughts, let us know that too. We'd love to know kind of what you thought. So we're going to do one quick final review of all of our books and all of our grades. All right, so my September books, from order from lowest to highest, would be A Star Is Born, which had a B-, and then we have All the Blues Come Through by Metra Farrari, which had a B, and then My Heart Is a Chainsaw, which had a B+, and then Mrs. March, which had an A-, and then Sweetbitter by Stephanie Danler, which had an A. And then I'm obviously reading Stray by Stephanie Danler, which I also think will end up getting an A as well. So.
Okay, and for my September wrap-up, I gave Play Dirty a B-, Song of SpiderMan a big ol' F. I DNF'd Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone, but I will be tackling that probably in November or December. And then the Bake Shop at Pumpkin and Spice, I gave a nice C-. Okay.
Well, that does it for our September wrap-up. So we're so glad that you joined us again and that you came here to, wrap up our books with us. I know that you don't feel great about this month, but...
I think we should have like a dunce hat every time we have a bad reading month because I feel so bad.
Well, it's like we anticipate thinking we're going to have a good month because of the books that we chose, and then we think that or the books that we did choose maybe weren't going to be as impressive, and they end up kind of surprising us. So you kind of never know what you're going to get, which is why we love reading. It's why we love doing this, because we get surprised, and then we get disappointed, and then we get surprised again, and then, it's all of our feelings change.
It was either reading or grading papers, and it's like, I think the grading papers are probably a little bit more important.
Yeah.
At least for the students anyway.
But reading was, for me, this month, a really big escape, and I'm really thankful that I was able to kind of tackle all these books because it got me out of the muck that I was in every day. So I really appreciated having all these books at the ready. So, well, thank you again for coming. We are Shelf Possessed.
I am David.
And I'm Craig. We hope that you'll like the video, you'll subscribe, you'll share the video with friends and family who might like this channel. You can also follow us on Instagram.
At @shelf_possessed.
And see pictures of all of our books and our report cards and all that stuff. And just engage with us there, too. We'd love to have you. So, we're dangerously close to hitting 300. So once we hit 300 subscribers, we promised that we would do a more personal Q&A. If you have questions for that personal Q&A and you would like us to see them, go ahead and comment them below too so we can get those into the mix for our next video that we shoot. Yeah?
All right.
Well, we're so glad you came back. Thank you for coming, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.